Guys and gals, Kyle Hannon here with another episode of the Art of Physical Fitness show. Today I'm answering more questions that were addressed to me via Facebook, and today's question comes from Daniel. It is a multi-part question, so I'll try and get through all the parts of it if I can. But let's just, if I can get focus on one area, it's going to be his question about program creation. Daniel says that he mostly deals with fat loss clients, so he wants to hear the different side of the equation, how I go about actually developing athletes at my gym, Strive Training, here in Cincinnati, Ohio. So, Daniel, to answer your question, how I go about developing athletes. First and foremost, you must look at the level of athlete that I'm training. And all the athletes in my gym are junior high or high school level. So with that said, my training has to curtail to that. So it's not so much where I get to go into nitty-gritty advanced training principles or anything like that. There's a lot of basic, fundamental stuff, general physical preparation, as it's called in the athlete performance world. But, squatting, push-ups, pull-ups, lunging, sled drag, back raises, medicine ball throws, all that is incorporated into the program. So from the get-go, I have a three-phase program for everyone. Level 1 is called our initiation program, and it's there for all new members to develop a basic level of strength, movement ability, idea of how to properly squat and do push-ups and things of that nature. And so once we get through there and I develop a base of strength and cardio and conditioning and what have you, the next phase we move on to, it builds on it and we get into more basic barbell lifts. In that introductory initiation level, we do a lot of things. Again, the exercise is the same, just how I implement it and how I coach it changes a little bit. Say for the squat, for example, instead of using any type of bar, we usually use the goblet squat, holding the kettlebell right here as we go down to the squat. So, basic little things like that, just remedializing the exercises, if you will, to get them to a point to have proficiency in a squat, in a push-up, in a dead hinging pattern or deadlifting pattern. So I'm just teaching basic motor patterns and getting their conditioning up. The second stage is called apprenticeship level. And the apprenticeship level, it gets into more heavier lifting. We start in the initiation level, we're dealing with reps of 10 and more. When we get into the apprenticeship level, we start working with reps of 5 in our strength lifts. And our strength lifts namely are the safety squat bar squat and the trap bar deadlift. The reason why I choose the safety squat bar squat is because it's less stressful on the shoulders for the athlete. And I'm not trying to develop any competitive powerlifters here, so why put them at any further risk putting them in the back squat? Sure, we'll do front squat occasionally, but for the most part, we stick with the safety squat bar squat. It's versatile. I love it. It's athletes pick up on it because also I love the safety squat bar because of the transfer I have. Notice how I said earlier where we start off with a goblet squat with everyone and their hands right here holding the kettlebell. We're all getting the safety squat bar squat and where their hands right here holding on the bar. So it's kind of it's easier for them to repattern and understand quicker how to do the movement instead of now having to think how to set our back, how to get our hands down, how to squeeze our shoulder blades, and all the intricacies that go into a barbell rack squat. So that's how I go along. Once we get through in that apprenticeship level, we now get into more teaching more so how to hinge. In the initiation level, usually the kids don't have strong enough hamstrings, glutes, and lower back to be able to hinge properly. And so in that case, I just focus on doing back raises and the squats and box squats and lunges and sled drag and things like that to strengthen up the muscles that are going to be used during hinge. By the time they get to apprenticeship level, their muscles are strong enough where 99% of the time, the kid is able to now, just within a few minutes of coaching cues, they're able to get the hinging pattern. So, once we get past those two levels are, again, developing a base level of strength and developing the maneuverability. Then we get into the third level, and the top level is where we get into our more specific style of training. Now, with that said, we don't do a lot of sport-specific stuff, if you will, because, again, they're general. I'm dealing with 12-year-old, 13, 14, 15, 16-year-old kids, and they're still in a phase where they need to work on general development of their skills. And so we still stick with a lot of squats. We go heavier. We might go a little more heavy intensity, working up to 3 heavy sets of 3, 2 heavy sets of 5, 5, 3, 2, on the typical rep schemes I go with. And I change the workouts monthly for them. Now, as far as periodization of all that for the individual sports, I typically there are some certain things that I take into account. So I have trained a lot of baseball players, and with that said, we do a lot of stuff with shoulder health, shoulder stability, as well as rotational strength and resistance in that direction, so we don't have oblique strains and things of that nature. But when it gets down to it, the nitty-gritty of the workout is mostly, it's the same for, it's pretty close for a baseball player as it is for a football player, a soccer player, what have you. They all need to get stronger. How do you get stronger? Squat and deadlift. They need to get stronger upper bodies, push-ups and dumbbell benching and weighted push-ups and things of that nature. I don't have my baseball players benching except with dumbbells because of the stress on the shoulder. So, again, there's some slight variations for the athlete, but again, mostly it's still basic and with an idea of getting them stronger without getting them injured in the weight room. With that said, there are a few things to implement that are kind of sports-specific related, especially regarding baseball, where training traditional sagittal pattern lifts like the deadlift, the squat, lunges, all that, and it leaves out where a lot of power production is, and where power is, if you in sport training, you learn that power is plane specific. And so we want to be able, for a baseball player with all the rotation they have, it's not gonna be as good of a carryover doing jumps and explosive lifts in a sagittal pattern as it is doing rotational work to develop rotational power. It makes sense. So to develop that, we do a lot of medicine ball throws from a shot, wind up, lifting up the leg from a 45 degree, other things like that, overhead, like part of the soccer throw, developing the stretch reflex in the abdominals and the obliques, and more exercises of that sort. And we will also include things like lateral sled drag, lateral lunges, lateral single leg jumps, and lateral jumps or band resisted hide-ins, as you can find, like Eric Cressy might talks about sometimes on his YouTube channel and on his blog. So of those things, like the band resistant hide and lateral jump, we're developing hip abduction strength and power, and with the medicine ball throws, we're developing that rotational in the hips pattern and patterning separation of shoulders from the hips instead of having the shoulders and hips rotate together, teaching the athletes how to more effectively go hips and then shoulders and bring it through. It creates more of an elastic effect for the athlete than just locking down. That's when you see someone like throws like a girl. They can't disassociate between their hips and their shoulders, so it just all moves in one pattern instead of hips and shoulders, and allows a lot of nice, like a rebound effect or an elastic band or however you want to describe it, effect. So, with that all said, periodization itself with these athletes, I don't have specific, I guess the most exact thing that you could say I do is concurrent periodization, where we're training multiple facets at a time. Hypertrophy, strength, power, flexibility, what have you. Again, these are younger athletes. These aren't high college level or professional level athletes. Not to say there aren't poorly trained athletes at those levels, but again, these are high school kids, junior high kids. So there's not so much where I'm periodizing outside of the idea of concurrent periodization. More so, it's what does the athlete need at that time. It's not so much where it's, in a linear periodization model. I don't know if you're not too much familiar with that, Daniel, but there's a hypertrophy phase, then there's a strength phase, then there's a power phase, and then you're into the end season, and so forth. And some other training philosophies, it's that way as well. It has that general trend to it. Now, that's great for higher level athletes, but in this case, with the athletes I'm dealing with, it gets down to the question of what does the athlete actually need? Does that athlete need to be spending 4 weeks or 6 weeks, whatever, on a power phase when they can't even squat the bar? No, it's ridiculous. So they need to be focused on developing strength. So instead of, even if it's a month right before the season or what have you, it's just because the book says do power work right before the season, that's not going to give the athlete the most bang for the buck if they can't squat the bar. So focusing on strength at that point is what they need. Or if they need increasing muscle mass is what they need. If it's like a football player, they really need to get up and weight for their position, and that might be what they need. So I don't necessarily go traditionally hypertrophy, strength, power. It's just what does the athlete need. Now, in general trend, it does lean itself that way, where I do periodize things like medicine ball throws. I was talking about with baseball players, so that I don't overtrain the rotational pattern to mess up their throwing. But mechanics, when their throwing does pick up during the off season, around this time actually, they start picking up a baseball again and throwing, I will dial back the medicine ball throw so that it doesn't interfere with our skill practice. Obviously, you don't want to take away from the sport practice. That's just ridiculous. So, with that all said, let's see. Address program creation, periodization, exercise order now. So with exercise order, it's as you would think. It's kind of like we're talking about periodization, but it's minimized in the workout itself, where the general order is a power workouts, exercises, strength exercises, hypertrophy workout exercises, and conditioning exercises. And from that point, it varies. I add, subtract, decrease volume, add volume, depending on what that athlete needs. That's a general workout pattern, if you will. So, for example, this month for one of our days for the higher level athletes, in that third stage I was describing at the beginning of the video. One day was when they came in and they did medicine ball rotational throws, 30 per side from a shot where they wind it up like they're lifting their leg like pitching, and then drive off and worked on good powerful hip rotation and hip abduction through medicine ball throws. And then we follow that up with kettlebell squat jumps with around 10 to 30% of their 2-rep max. I don't use any. I don't test 1-rep max. Very rarely, occasionally will happen. Just for the sake that for fun type of a deal. But realistically speaking, always sticking with 2 or above. 2 is I like 2s better as far as if you're close enough. If you did a 2, you're close enough to your 1-rep max. And also, you can't overestimate. I mean, you can, but with 1s, you can also often run into the problem of over guessing where you're going to be, and then you lift it and you get stapled by the weight. With the 2, you're going to have a much better chance, at least getting 1 rep. So that's why I stick with 2 with these athletes. So again, with the kettlebell squat jumps, 10 to 30% of the 1-rep max, of the 2-rep max, excuse me, and then we follow that up. Take squat bar squat. We did either depending on what week they were, depending on the order. It's not exactly specific. It changes based on the athlete's energy levels. Because some athletes, they're training with their high school teams as well right now, so they're lifting a lot there too. And so every athlete's different how I program what set reps they need. Now, it's not written down on paper. It's more of an on-the-fly coaching decision type of a deal. But the general pattern I try to go by is week 1, they'll do 2 heavy sets of 5, where 1 set is at a 8 on a 1 to 10 effort level, how hard it was, and then we drop back whatever that weight was. We drop back about 90% of it and hit another 5. Or if the warm-up set before that one was already 90%, we call it a day. We only want 2 heavy sets of 5. Then the next week I go for 3 heavy sets of 3. The same general idea, going up to a heavy 3, and then making sure that we had 2 other heavy 3s that were within about 90% of that 3. And then finally, the final week of that phase, we'll go usually a heavy 5, which is about the same weight as our heavy 5 in the 2x5 week. Then a heavy 3, which is the same weight as our 3x3 week. And then we'll set a PR, usually moving up to a double to go on. Now, again, it's not always that nice order, specific order, depending on the kids. Sometimes you just stick with 2 sets of 5 because the kid's not ready to work with, or they have missed a couple training sessions in a row, or what have you. So it varies based on the training sessions. That's the general idea of it. So let's see, exercise order. Talked about the power, the workout itself. After the squats, we might, if the kid isn't lifting with their school and they're not doing anything else and they're trying to gain mass, I'll drop weight again from about 80% of their highest level effort that day, and then we'll hit anywhere from about 10 to 15 reps. You can do like 1 set of 10, 2 sets of 7 or something like that. I like to do more like 5 sets of 3, so we can use a higher weight and still get 15 reps of reps. And now we're getting higher weight as opposed to if we just did like 2 sets of 8 or 1 set of 15 or what. We're going to be able to use a heavier weight if we go 5 to 3, and we're going to get more volume, and the kid's going to have a better stimulus for growth. So after that squatting, we went into just dumbbell work, dumbbell bench pressing, dumbbell rows, RDLs, remaining deadlifts, and walking lunges. And we finish off with reverse twist, where we pin our shoulders to the ground, and they will rotate their legs back and forth, kind of like a windshield wiper on the floor, so that we can develop just like I was talking about before, the disassociation between our hips and the shoulders, as well as develop the strength in our obliques, so that we can, again, have stronger hips and hopefully prevent oblique strain. So I don't have too much conditioning work for these athletes. The workout, especially after the squatting or the deadlifting itself, we push the pace on them, minimal rest breaks. That gives them conditioning in itself. But also, the sport of baseball, it's not that great of a need, especially considering, like I said before, they're working with their teams who are their coaches, don't know what they're doing, and they're having them run probably 5, 6, 7 miles a week or something. If the programs that they're having, the amount of running that they're having been doing, the structure that they're having been doing is just completely wrong. And it makes me shake my head, but also it makes me realize that there's a lot of work for me out there still to do in the city right now to help change mindsets and change ideas of how athletes are being trained in Cincinnati. But with that all said, before I get off, so I can get off my soapbox, I'll finish up with your question about active recovery. So, like, again, just rephrasing back to what I was just saying, all these athletes, they're training both of their teams and with me. In fact, one kid has been 6 days a week has been training, twice with me and then 4 with his team, and has been beating them up. His strength has been going down, down, down. He's a baseball player. He's a catcher and shortstop at third base, and they're having him squat 4 sets of 12, sometimes even higher reps. And it just blows my mind. How do you even rationalize that in your mind? That, yeah, the sport of baseball, it requires an action where you're going to be under tension for upwards of a minute. That never happens in the sport of baseball. So why would you implement an exercise again for an athlete that will require that builds up their capacity to develop work in a minute? Not the sport. It's quick second bursts. It's one pitch, 1.5 seconds at a high level. So again, getting back to active recovery, a lot of things I suggest. I mean, there's tons of things you do: massage, sauna, contrast showers where you go 30 seconds or about 2 minutes warm, as warm as you can tolerate, and about 30 seconds cold in a shower, and continue to contrast after about 15, 20 minutes. And then there's Epsom salt bath. You just get in a warm bath, put in about a cup of Epsom salt, and the magnesium will help promote recovery. Light work with bands or on a Airdyne type bicycle, seated bicycle. Basically, at the end of the day, the means isn't as important as what you're trying to achieve. And what you're trying to achieve is to promote vasodilation, increasing the size of the blood vessels, to allow the waste product in the damaged tissues to be released and allow new, fresh nutrients to be rushed in and fresh oxygenated blood into the muscles so that the repairing process can go on. So, with that said, a lot of my athletes, they're high school kids, so that, how high school kids are as far as following these type of directives. But when it does come push to shove, I would say the most useful things that they do use when they decide that they need to actually do some active recovery is contrast showers. Those help a lot for them. Massage before every training session with foam rollers and what have you. Sometimes even my manual therapy, working on certain areas with my thumbs and digging on trigger points and things like that. And then the flexibility. So with that all said, Daniel, I hope this answered all your questions. I know it's kind of a long video, but if you have any more questions or anything wasn't exactly clear, let me know. Send me a question on Facebook like you did before. Send me a remark. Let me know. Be happy to answer it for you and help you out. All right, everyone, thank you for checking in for another episode of the Art of Physical Fitness Show. Until next time, I will talk to you later. Have a great day. Bye.